Hey everybody, welcome to the Pivot Shift Ahead page. My name's James Shaw. I'm so glad that you're here with me, and it's an important conversation. Normally every weekday morning we jump on at 8 o'clock Eastern and have a quick call just to help give us some inspiration before you put in your perspiration. And with Keller Williams closed today in honor of Juneteenth tomorrow, what we thought it made a lot of sense to do is replace that daily call that we do and have a conversation around the significance of Juneteenth and some things that we as real estate agents can think about when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the best way to do that is to invite the person who's helping us lead the charge with all of that. It's our new Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Keller Williams Realty International, Julia Lashay. Welcome to Pivot Shift Ahead. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm thrilled to be here. This is awesome. Thanks for having me, James.
Oh, of course. We're so excited. So this is a new opportunity for you. You were loving life, I think, in the Twin Cities, right? And then you had this opportunity over the last year to really kind of take charge on some things when it comes to making sure that we as a company are focused on the E of the Y4C2Ts, which is equity opportunities for all. Before we start our conversation around Juneteenth and then what we as agents should probably know about our industry and equity, would you tell us a little bit about what you're doing for KWRI?
Yes, I'm excited to be here. You're right. I have a team in Minneapolis, the Signature Group, and I actually spent a year in Dallas before I made my way here to Austin. And I'm glad to be here. I am what we are calling the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And really, I've had a fantastic experience with KW. I've been with KW for 16 years in a lot of different capacities, all kinds of different leadership positions, obviously as an agent, a broker. And I'm really glad to be here to make sure that everyone is able to have a similar story to mine as mine, that they can do whatever they'd like to do in this company. A year ago, almost to date, a year ago in a few weeks now, Gary Keller started the Social Equity Task Force. And we've been working really hard. The Social Equity Task Force has done all kinds of things, but the purpose of it is really just to make sure that we are, as agents and as market centers, making our environments inclusive, a place where people really feel like they belong and can grow and develop and be whatever they want to be, a mega agent, a team leader, a regional director, whatever that is, And so I'm glad to be here to help lead that effort and the diversity, equity, inclusion efforts taking place within KW here at the international headquarters as well. To me, if you ask me what my job is to make sure that all of our market centers are as fruitful, productive, and profitable as possible. How do we do that? By, of course, recruiting as many profitable, productive agents as we can. But when they get there, do they feel welcome? Do they feel like they belong? Are they included? And so that's really what a large part of my role is, in addition to a whole bunch of other stuff.
Well, and I think there's a lot of research that talks about that the more diverse your environment is, actually the more productive and profitable it is. As you bring more people in to the conversation, it only makes you a better place. So we're so excited that you're in that spot. And it's great to see the progress that this company has made in a year to be focused on that. And so with it being Juneteenth, what I thought we should do is first, we should probably have a kind of a history lesson of what really is Juneteenth. When you and I were talking about this, I didn't grow up learning about Juneteenth in school. I mean, I knew what it was. I was sharing with you, I worked at the Children's Museum in Indianapolis, which is the largest children's museum in the world. And we always did some stuff for the community around Juneteenth, but I didn't have a strong understanding of it and really didn't learn much about it until about a year ago. So I think there's a lot of people like me out there.
Yeah.
Could you give us just kind of update us a little bit so that we know what exactly is it that we're honoring and observing this weekend?
Yeah, and don't feel bad, James. I every year we went to Juneteenth. My mom was on the board, and not until I was an adult did I even actually know what it was. Because to me, it was that we're going to have a parade. We're about to eat a bunch of food. This is going to be great. I'm going to buy some new earrings. That was what I knew. But in reality, you're right. It is a great, important day that we really are commemorating. So on June 19th, 1865, enslaved Black Americans in Galveston, Texas, learned that they had been freed. 2 years prior, though, that Abraham Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. However, word did not get to Galveston, Texas, until 2 years later when they heard that they were free. Now, the reasons for that, vary, but most history will tell you that it was intentional because the slaveholders wanted to get an extra harvest in before they let them know that they were freed. So when they learned they were freed, about a year after that, they began celebrating Juneteenth, which was, again, June 19th, 1865, when they learned this. They began celebrating Juneteenth. And early celebrations were things like looking for lost family members, because obviously they had been separated from family members. So looking for lost family members, celebrating with music and foods that they ate, and just a shared sense of community and ancestry and history. And so in the beginning, they would read the Emancipation Proclamation, dance, sing, enjoy foods, and not that it wasn't met with any obstacles, because there was still a lot of threats of continued oppression and violence, death even. But it continued, and it became an annual celebration. So although it originated in Texas, all over the country now, people are celebrating June 19th as what we refer to as Juneteenth. And it looks very similar, even yet still today. Like I just mentioned to you, when I was a kid, we go to the park. It's very much so like a family reunion. We have a lot of food, a lot of fun, a lot of dancing, a lot of singing, things that are cultural, eat foods that are common to the Black culture. So that's what Juneteenth is. It is actually an official holiday in Texas.
Yeah.
And 48 other states as well, that commemorates June 19th, 1865, when the Black Americans in Galveston, Texas had learned they had been freed. And it is really commemorating freedom. So oftentimes Black people will liken it to, of course, the 4th of July, which on 4th of July, we were not free, right?
Correct.
So Juneteenth is a celebration of freedom and celebratory things of all of the things that we have to look forward to, the things we have overcome. Black people are resilient people. So we celebrate the resiliency. And that's what Juneteenth is.
Well, it's an important day. And still, I mean, there's still opposition at times, right, Julia, to understanding this. And so I think it's important that we as a community are educated so that we know what we're honoring. And gosh, it took 2 years to find out that for this group of the community to find out that they were free. It's something worth celebrating. It absolutely is. And so with that said, let's talk a little bit about what the challenges are, though, that we face still from our past as a country. And you are teaching a course now that's going all over the country and regions. You've done it in my region in South Florida already, where we're looking at some of the inequities that still exist in real estate today because of things from the past. And I think we as real estate agents need to understand that and should have a open conversation about it. So where do we begin when we look at real estate's role in some inequities so that we can start to move forward?
Yeah, great question. So for us as real estate agents, there's a few things. We really do play an important role, more important than most people think. We can either be the conduit or the gatekeeper to the American dream. And you know, the real estate agents and also HUD, the FHA has not always played a positive role in that history. We can start with, you know, just the redlining. And so we could start all the way back with 1865 and when slavery ended and all of that and fast forward. But we don't have to go back that far to see some of the issues that we are still experiencing in real estate today. We can even go as just back to 1988. I bet people would be surprised to learn that the Fair Housing Act that we learn about every year wasn't actually enforced at all until 1988. You know, I was 7 years old. You know, I don't know how old you were, but that's not long ago. You know, and so some of the challenges that existed. I know we learned the definition of redlining. We learned the definition of like what is a deed restriction or a deed covenant. You know, we learned those things, but not really the impact of them. Many years and years of redlining and segregation by the government. And the deed restrictions that existed in properties and still exist in properties today. Somebody today just sold a house that still has a racially restrictive covenant in it. And so the impact of the hundreds of years of that happening are causing us to be at a place where even today, I'm still selling houses to first generation homeowners. Grandparents didn't own houses. Certainly the great grandparents didn't own houses. There was just so many barriers to prevent it. intentionally. And
Yeah.
so there is a long history of this going all the way back to Juneteenth. But fast forwarding even to now and today, where the impact is that we have this huge disparity in home ownership, where the United States average for home ownership is about 70%. In some states like mine, Minnesota, it's like 73%. And then you'll have the Black American home ownership rate at 26%. And that huge disparity is a direct result of years and years of redlining, deed restrictions, withholding information, barriers, those kind of things that have caused us to be where we're at today.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is people will say, I mean, I was 11, right, in 1988. So you go, I wasn't selling real estate back then. And people will say, look, redlining ended years ago. Redline ending a long time ago. So why are we still worried about it? I've had those conversations with people. I'm sure you have too. Why are we still focused on something that hasn't existed in quite some time? And I'm not asking that in a rude way. I'm asking for those that don't understand why we're still talking about it.
Yeah, and that's a fair question. And because if we start using dates like 1988, then we don't really realize that last week we were still encountering appraisal issues, strictly due to racism. You know, we don't have to go back to 1988 even. And you're absolutely right when you say, what does it have to do with us now? In The Color of Real Estate, I start that class off with a video. There was an undercover investigation done by Newsday, and they went undercover to see if real estate agents were treating people differently based on race. They went into a particular area that had historically been very, very segregated based on the way that history has created it to be. And it still is very segregated, and they wondered what role real estate agents were playing in that. So they went undercover to do an investigation to find out if real estate agents were in fact helping to keep our communities segregated the way they are. And unfortunately, they found that was the case in that area, that real estate agents were contributing to the segregation. So you may feel like it was so long ago, but the way that the communities were shaped were intentional. And we do actually play a role every day in whether or not we keep them that way. So they may have been redlined years ago, but they are still redlined today. And even unknowingly sometimes, which is why in The Color of Real Estate, we talk about some unconscious bias. Even unknowingly, sometimes we do steer people one way or another. We all do it. I've done it. I don't know that there's any one real estate agent that can say, I have never, ever, ever, ever in any way, shape, or form violated the Fair Housing Act. I've never steered anyone. I've never, showed any prejudice. I've never, and even if you think that, I would bet some point you did.
Well, what you're saying, right, is that you probably didn't do it intentionally.
You may not have even done it intentionally. I was even one time I was on the news and I was mic'd up and everything, just like you are, James. And I made a comment about a neighborhood that I was standing in. Like I wanted them to point the camera a certain way because I made some derogatory comment about the neighborhood and people who moved there. It was my neighborhood. I lived there 2 blocks down, but I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I said it. Like when it came out of my mouth, it was like, oh, it was too late to catch it.
Yeah.
But we all do it, you know? And so The Color of Real Estate really does talk about the history that we may or may not have been involved in. But the reality of it is, what do we as real estate professionals do about it now? You know?
Well, and so what do we do about it now?
Well, great question again. Some things that we can do about it now is being intentional about making sure that we are checking ourselves, right? It's kind of like in Bold, where you take, the band from one arm and put it to the other when you're naked. Same thing when you find yourself making presidential, not presidential, I can't say the word, but when you start to have these biases, how about that? You catch yourself, because we all do them sometimes unconsciously, but also making sure that you're incorporating some form of a diverse business strategy. So what do I mean by that? Well, none of us is as smart as all of us. And if we all are only enclosed by our own people who look like us, talk like us, walk like us, think like us, vote like us, you're not really reaching the broader audience. The United States is growing more and more diverse every day. And if you're not well-versed on different cultures, different people, their habits, buying practices, just being open to embracing diversity, you're going to have a hard time meeting a lot of your business goals. And in fact, you'll probably not reaching as many clients as you possibly could if you actually did a little bit of research into other people, like how we're celebrating Juneteenth and learning about that. That helps you to understand other cultures, and that actually does help your business because you're able to relate to people in a different way when you learn a little bit about somebody different than yourself. So all kinds of things we can do to implement diversity into our business, advertising, but a lot of things that are important for us to broaden our reach, and also to make sure that we have consistent practices and policies that are, one, going to make sure that we're being fair to everybody, but two, also keep us out of trouble, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and so what I hear you say is let's create a little bit of awareness in our mind of what we say or what we think or what we do, so that we can start to uncover some of those biases that exist inside of us that we don't realize right now are there. And that would help us at a high level. So let me ask you about this. And this is something that came up recently on one of our pivot calls. We have very transparent conversations on those calls. This is a community that's been with each other for a year and a half. And while none of us have really met each other in person, we all feel like we know each other.
That's awesome. Great job, James.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's the group that's doing it, right? They're the ones that have stepped up and participated. What's interesting is we had somebody bring up the other day, look, hey, when I go work with people, I just want to help them. I want to help them find a house. I don't see color. I don't see gender. I don't see any of those things. And I understand where this person was coming from. In fact, I've said things like that. And I'm sure many people watching this have said things like that. And yet I learned one time, actually, to say that doesn't actually make a lot of sense. And you're actually maybe taking away from someone. Like I look at you, Julia. I know you're a Black woman. I see you. I know that's who you are. And so I do see your gender. I do see your color. And I think it would be helpful. Could you touch on that a little bit about just creating awareness about how we do see each other? I'm not going to treat you differently because you're a Black woman, but I definitely know you're one.
That's the key. Exactly. You're right. People who say, oh, I don't see color, or everyone's the same to me, that's almost always well-intended, right? And the harm in that, though, is that the intention is not to not see it, because by not seeing it, what you're also not seeing is that my walk in life may be a little bit different than your walk in life. And also my walk in our real estate journey may be a little different than your walk in the real estate journey. In the class, in The Color of Real Estate, I start with that video so that people can see that people are often treated differently based on not just their race, but gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, all kinds of things that people are frequently discriminated against. So if I say I don't see any difference between you and I, James, what in essence you're saying is I don't see any of the oppression that I just talked about with the history of Juneteenth. I don't see any of the barriers that you're referring to. I don't see any of that. And that's not going to help us overcome them. That's not going to help us say, I do see that. And I'm not going to treat you differently. Again, I have consistent business practices where I treat everybody the exact same, regardless of whether you're a Black woman, a white man, or a blue Smurf. It doesn't matter. This is how I treat all of my clients. And so that's really what the goal is. The goal is not to not see color. The goal is to see color and still be able to treat people the same. And again, check any biases that you may or may not have.
Yeah. And it's so much bigger than that too. When you say the color of real estate, we're not just talking about the Black community. And I know that sometimes people say, hey, I don't know that we need that. Our community is not that diverse. And I heard you say, what you're saying is you don't have a lot of Black people. But the truth is, when we're talking color real estate, we're talking race, we're talking gender, we're talking sexual orientation, we're talking so many things, religious beliefs, just so many different things. And we are America is a salad bowl of people, right? It's so many different types and everything. And we truly, if we're going to have opportunities for all, we've just got to be aware of what we think and what we say. So with that said, what's the kind of final message you'd want everyone to get about just, again, how we can create some awareness so that we can truly help our communities and create home ownership and just really be a light for the people around us?
I'm so glad you said that. Thank you for asking. One, thank you for acknowledging that. I often want to make it very clear that when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we are not talking about a Black and white thing, right? There's so many different dimensions to diversity. Like I mentioned, age, gender, race, religion. Religion, in fact, is the oldest and most meaningful ways that people are different, so on and so forth. So thank you for mentioning that. In The Color of Real Estate, we talk about all of those things. And the most important thing that I want to say is awareness. I am always proud. I teach at associations all over the place, all over the country. I can spot a KW agent a mile away. They're different. They walk different, talk different. And for us to also embrace this level of understanding to really master our trade of real estate sales and add this as a feather in our hat of, I actually am embracing diversity. I'm intentional about it. I'm aware of it. I've learned about it. I think that just makes us better real estate agents. It makes us more equipped to go out into our communities and to sell more houses, to help people get into home ownership. So I would just say, one, take the class, The Color of Real Estate. Two, be willing just to be aware and stay in curiosity, right? We talk about that all the time. And three, it is Juneteenth. You can Google Juneteenth in your local area and you can find all kinds of festivities that are taking place. I'm new to Austin. I'm going to be doing the same thing, Googling where can I go to enjoy some music, to get some good food, maybe buy some new earrings, and just really celebrate the moment and enjoy that. It's obviously open to everyone, and I would encourage you to experience it.
Julia, thank you so much for sharing. And I know people are going to go, how do I take The Color of Real Estate? So they just need to get in touch with their market center leadership or regional leadership, because you guys are in the process of scheduling those all over the place. So make sure you check it out.
KW.com. You can email events@kw.com.
Oh, I hope they're ready to check that email box, because it's going to get loaded up. Julia, thank you so much for the time today. We're so glad to have you in our KW family. And for those of you watching, I trust that we'll see you next week on our traditional calls. We always start at, we usually open the Zoom room at about 7:30. I hop on about 7:45, and the call starts at 8 Eastern. You can watch it right here on this Facebook page or pivotshiftcall.com. So I trust that I'll see you there. Julia, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
James. Thank you.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.